Central European time. So just a 5-minute break. Okay, we will start soon with the session 2. Okay, welcome back to the EcoClup webinar. We are starting with the session 2, and I would like to present our next speaker. We have Mr. Alan Highet from UK Trade and Investment, and he will be presenting our next case company, Green Energy Options. Since 2009, Green Energy Options has engaged with the British government's International Trade Department, UKTI, and Alan is the local contact for GEO. UKTI has provided assistance for GEO through, for example, UK embassies in Europe as well as in the USA, the Middle East, Australia and New Zealand. And let's hear now from Alan about the internationalization strategy of Green Energy Options. So I think, Alan, you are ready. Welcome. Alan, you are ready. Welcome.
Good afternoon from Peterborough. And thank you for that introduction. I'd like to start just by saying a few words about who Green Energy Options are. First of all, if anyone would like to get back to the company to ask questions, you should contact Rachel Bennett, who unfortunately cannot be here today. The company is currently pitching for a couple of fairly major pieces of work, and I agreed in the spirit of the thing to take over from Rachel and deliver this presentation. I'll leave that on the screen for a few moments so that you can take a note of Rachel's email address, so that when it comes to question time, it might actually be easier and quicker, and she certainly knows a lot more about the detail than I do. Just while you're writing that down, to take the opportunity to draw your attention to the bottom right of the slide, which refers to making energy visible, because that is what Green Energy Options does. It has a number of products which make energy visible to the end consumer, and that is designed to change behavior in terms of how we as individuals use energy and use electricity and use gas and so on, and because it is, of course, as we all know, a precious and an increasingly precious resource. I'll continue now with a background to Green Energy Options. It's a private limited company established and based in Cambridge just 5 years ago, and in that 5 years they've grown quite substantially to a turnover of in the region of 12 million euros, and about 10% of that is international trade. What is significant is that 10% has come in about the last two and a bit years, notably since Rachel joined the company, and the company, not because the company engaged with UKTI particularly, but the fact is that the company engaged with UKTI at that time, so I've known the company for that length of time. Green Energy Options manufactures in-home displays, IHDs, which are energy monitors, which at its most basic level enables consumers to see at a glance as they're passing their dining room table or their mantelpiece in their living area. It lets customers see whether or not they are using more or less energy than they were perhaps yesterday or the day before or the week before that, so that they can adjust their behaviour in order to use energy much more effectively. I'm not going to read every single line because you can read these for yourselves, but suffice to say that there are a number of product ranges that have been introduced in the last few years, and the company has fairly recently moved on to online portals and connected services. One of its most significant developments has been its opening of an office quite recently in Germany. And as I mentioned before, they've been working with us for some time. I've been engaged with UKTI, and I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. The purpose of this presentation is to demonstrate the processes that Green Energy Options have gone through in establishing their international strategy and what has made them so successful. Because it's no one particular aspect of what they have done, it's the fact that they have got an organised strategy and plan. And what Rachel would say if she was here just now would be to keep it simple, the KISS process, possibly without the stupid at the end of it, because I'm conscious that we're talking to a very intelligent audience. But keep it simple, keep it manageable, and keep it focused. When Green Energy Options were wondering which markets they should explore outside of the United Kingdom, they embarked upon a process of identifying, first of all, what are the market drivers and where are they that are appropriate for Green Energy Options products. And in that respect, countries that have smart meters already or are about to introduce them, that have legislation to support consumer in-home devices, as we have here in the UK, and of course within the European Union in particular, have a commitment to reduce carbon emissions by 2020. I mentioned before that we're looking at changing the behaviour of individual consumers. And that might suggest that the individual consumers, the end users, are the market. But that's not how Green Energy Options sees it, although obviously it's true, but it's not quite how they see it in terms of how they reach that market. They're not looking at volume sales or individual sales to end users. They're looking at volume sales to utilities and key resellers who influence their consumers in turn. And that is how the product ends up on the consumer's mantelpiece. A word about the United States. It's our experience in the UK that everyone wants to export to the United States, and a lot of people do, and they do so very successfully. Green Energy Options recognised that the US is not just one market. It's 50 markets, given the differences that exist in all the states. It would be the equivalent of a company in the United States deciding that they were going to export to the European Union. The question is, where exactly do you start, and what states or what territories are more relevant than others? One of the key questions in their strategy and one of the directions of the research has always been to identify whether Green Energy Options should open an office or not, have a local partner, or be in person in the particular territories. The most fundamental element of their strategy development has been about doing research and acting upon its findings. It's important to work with sources and organisations that you can trust, and that, in the case of Green Energy Options, they've used the resources that are available via UKTI as well as others. You can work with trade associations, but specifically, as your strategy unfolds in implementation, you need to be prepared to amend it as you go. You need to be flexible because circumstances do change. In terms of how Green Energy Options have carried out the research, they've visited copious numbers of exhibitions and conferences. They have been involved in networking. They address local services in each territory, and they've used independent market research organisations. Significantly, because this is not an inexpensive thing to do, they have identified where there is support available to help them to grow the business. In that respect, UKTI has been able to support with modest amounts of financial support, because there just isn't the money around these days to provide anything more than that. but particularly with practical assistance. Hence, a lot of the help that Green Energy Options has been able to identify has been free of charge even, or certainly subsidised.